Let's talk about one of the most controversial things in Star Wars today. Now, let me make something very clear. This is not a video to shame any character. Do not associate me or this video with the voice of the masses out there. I believe this video will be able to explain my reasons as to why Rey is not a Mary Sue, while also explaining how it's completely understandable for others to perceive that she is. Now, this video will be widely a theory with tons of facts that could back up these claims as to how she could not be a Mary Sue if this were to happen in Episode 9. So first we need to understand what is a Mary Sue, because many don't know. Mary Sue is a term used to describe a fictional character, usually female, with the male version being referred to as a Gary Stew. A Mary Sue is seen as too perfect and almost boring for lack of flaws, originally written as an idealized version of an author in a fanfiction. So with the last two sequel films, Episode 7 and 8, we hear the term Mary Sue tossed around more than Jar Jar's tongue after he zapped it on Annie's pod racer. Why do people say this? We haven't seen her training, we haven't seen her lineage, we haven't seen her connection to anything that would allow us to comprehend her strength in the Force. Now, some might say, well, Anakin was a Gary Stew. I would have to strongly disagree, and I'm also going to name some female characters that are extremely powerful and well-deserved. I'm not saying Rey isn't well-deserved, but we're going to dissect and discuss what will make her not a Mary Sue completely if this were to happen. So Anakin isn't a Gary Stew because he trained from the age of 9. He lost tons of battles, including his arm to Dooku and almost his eye to Ventress, only to become one of the best Jedi in the galaxy at such a young age. And even so, he wasn't strong enough to beat Obi-Wan, to stop his mother from dying, and he would have been absolutely destroyed if he tried to fight Sidious in Revenge of the Sith. Now imagine for a second if Anakin was stronger than Palpatine. He would have just choked the answer out of him to save Padme. Now, he lost against Obi-Wan to his own arrogance, but that's a different video for a different time. And all the while, keep in mind, he was the chosen one. This basically is just another term for saying that he was the chosen Gary Stew. His son, Luke, would have followed in his footsteps, however, he also continued to always get his booty handed to him by first Vader, who is toying with him, and then by the Emperor. For those who think that Vader actually lost against Luke, we can come back to that at a later time, or, maybe even at the end of this video. Let's look at female characters. Ahsoka Tano. She put in her hours to become a powerful Jedi that could then hold her own against Vader. Asajj Ventress. She was undoubtedly extremely powerful. And as for the Legends character, one of my personal favorites, Mara Jade. She was literally one of the coolest characters in my opinion. She pretty much had every role in Star Wars. She did it all. From one of Jabba's dancers, to a smuggler, to a Sith, to a Jedi. I'm actually making a super long video about her entire life and eventual marriage to Luke Skywalker, so stay tuned for that because a lot of people don't know about her, and she is one of the most underrated characters in Star Wars. She was very cool. So with all of these characters, some might be able to see that Rey would appear to be a Mary Sue. I personally don't think she is, because I don't think J.J. Abrams would write her to have such a poor lineage. I think J.J. is a thoughtful writer, and having a close relationship with George Lucas for many years, I believe he respects and seeks counsel from the Grandmaster himself on many characters and moves regarding Star Wars as a whole. While we have to wait for the final chapter in Episode 9 to learn about her fully in order to judge, what scenario would make her not be a Mary Sue immediately once we found out? The short answer is there are only two ways, and I have proof for both of them to have a plausible outcome. So let's get on with the theories. Number 1. Let's just get right to it. Rey is a Palpatine. This, for me, would solve any doubt in my mind of her just being a super powerful character without any reason, or in other words, a Mary Sue. She's the descendant of the most powerful Sith Lord of all time. His blood runs through her veins. Simple enough. Her connection to the Force is so strong that she would immediately understand how to use a lightsaber when she starts to focus on it. She would understand how to use the Force once she remembers it. She always felt something burning inside of her, and now that it's awake, she feels lost, like she doesn't know where to belong, always wondering where she is or who she is or what this immense power within her really is, and she doesn't understand it, but at the same time, she also likes it. She fights just like Palpatine. Look at these two movements side by side. There haven't been any users in the movies at all that fight like this. It's an extremely aggressive and dominating attack that only Palpatine used, and it was in a scene that specifically highlighted his movement, and no one else is on screen at that moment. Right after Palpatine uses his Force Scream at the Jedi who came to arrest him, which, by the way, sidestep, a Force Scream was used by Sith to disorient their opponents. It's a fun fact you didn't know. Leave a like if you didn't know it. Leave a like if you did know it. Just leave a like. We see him pause, snarl, and stab his opponent in a red fiery blaze. Rey does this exact same move against Kylo. The imagery of the red and blue flickering on her face when she's locked in a saber duel with Kylo is the strongest hint of symbolism regarding her pull to the light and dark flickering within her. Now, Palpatine or Snoke, most likely Palpatine, from the Force Awakens book, can be heard, or actually read, to be speaking to Rey. It's after her awakening in the Force, and she starts to wail on Kylo with her lightsaber, and she makes him drop his own. As she does this, she hears a mysterious voice and feels the pull of the dark side. The book says this: take a glancing blow to the head and chest. Kylo went down. A prominent burn slashed across his face. Weakened, he reached out towards his lightsaber, trying to draw it to him. One quick final strike, and she could kill him. The landing lights of General Hux's shuttle appeared in the distance, coming over the trees in her direction. She had to make a decision now. Kill him, a voice inside her head said. It was amorphous, unidentifiable, raw, pure vengeful emotion. So easy, she told herself, so quick. She recoiled from it, from the dark side. She wants to go to the dark, that's where it's calling her, but she's fighting against it. That's why she went right into that hole, that dark side cave hole thing, when she was training with Luke. Kylo is the opposite of her. He wants to go to the light, but he stays within the dark. This is why Snoke says she's his equal in the Force. Two halves of the same soul, almost. Where one was weak, the other was strong, and together made the perfect power. If Rey is the granddaughter of Palpatine, then no one can say a darn thing about her being a Mary Sue. She's the granddaughter of the Emperor of the Galaxy. Wait a second. Is this her grandmother? Case closed. This would mean that Palpatine would probably have her maybe 40 or 50 years prior to The Force Awakens. So perhaps sometime during Revenge of the Sith, or sometime during the prequels, where he had a son or a daughter who later went on to have Rey. They probably knew her capabilities, and so they put her up for adoption to keep her safe. The foster parents probably were the ones who set her on Jakku. I mean, I don't know, that could just be a theory at this point. Maybe it's not as black and white as we think. Her parents wouldn't just drop her off on the planet. Maybe it was someone else, like a caretaker or foster parents or something. I'm just gonna slip this in here. This ship looks a lot like this ship from the Rise of Skywalker teaser. If she's not the granddaughter, and this isn't part 2, this is just sidestep, if she's not the granddaughter, then she's related to him in some way, either by being a clone or through combining Luke's DNA from the hand that Vader cut with, Palpatine's own DNA, and then fusing it to create Rey. It's Star Wars. This kind of stuff can happen somewhere. Or, she's simply just a descendant, that which being his granddaughter, which I think would totally rock. The second plausible answer is that she's a Kenobi. This would make sense as to why Obi-Wan spoke to only her in the Force-backed vision, and why the Skywalker lightsaber calls to her. The Skywalker lightsaber was in Obi-Wan's possession longer than it was ever with Anakin and Luke combined. Obi-Wan had it for about 19 years before giving it to Luke. He completely reconstructed it. Anakin's lightsaber hilt looked like this, while Kenobi made it look like this. If we can now so easily call Luke's lightsaber to be Rey's when it still looks identical, exactly the same, then we can definitely also call Anakin's lightsaber partly to be Obi-Wan's as well. I know that's a big pill for me to swallow because I'm a huge Anakin fan, but I mean, hey, we can't say that this is now Rey's so easily when Obi-Wan had it and actually made it look completely different, and who knows what he did with it, and it wouldn't be named as Obi-Wan's. So it could have some of Obi-Wan's energy within it. If Rey is the granddaughter of Kenobi, then no one can say anything about her being a Mary Sue either. She's literally the descendant of the High Ground King and the Master Troll, Obi Hello There One Kenobi. And so these are really the only two ways that I could see her lineage completely dousing the Mary Sue verbiage with fire and putting it to rest literally forever. Dead stop. Until then, we'll have to see if she's really a Mary Sue or not once The Rise of Skywalker hits theaters. Now, will these two things be the only lineage that Rey has? No, of course not. It could be completely different. She could be like the Broom Boy, just a random person who has the embodiment of the Force. Or maybe, she's a reincarnation of Anakin, the Force kind of just doing justice to the galaxy to bring balance once again, because Palpatine's still around. Or, at the end of the day, which this is actually the answer that I really think this could be real, I think she's a Solo. I think she could be Han Solo's daughter or granddaughter or something. Maybe him and Kira had a kid together and then they had Rey. Who knows? I don't know. Either way, she has some sort of connection to the Force. Who gave it to her, we don't know, and we won't know until we see the film. Now, as for the whole Vader losing to Luke thing in Return of the Jedi, I know this is going to turn some heads, as it probably did at the beginning of the video, but Vader was completely toying with Luke. He was just messing around in the dark, if you remember, being like, oh, if you won't turn, then perhaps she will. And that's when Luke blindsides him when his guard was completely down from the shadows, takes him by surprise, and the whole time Vader's just playing catch-up to block his son's parrying blows as he is shifting to the dark side. He eventually gets the upper hand on him, and Vader doesn't want to strike back and kill his son because he doesn't really understand what the heck is going on. So he just ends up taking the barrage of attacks and falls, and that's that. And of course, plot armor. But if Vader was really Vader from Rogue One fighting his son, I'm pretty sure he would have killed Luke in an instant. So that's what I think about that. As for the Rey theory thing, let me know what you think, or if there's something that I didn't mention. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, take care of yourselves, and leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Until the next one, remember, the Force will be with you, always.